What's going on, everybody? I'm Brandon from Walker's Woodworks. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going over five of my favorite DIY sleds and jigs that I use in the shop most. Let's get to it. So I had a project planned out for this week's video, but I actually tore a muscle in my forearm, so I can't really use it that well. I'm just trying to let it rest and heal, which is really hard. But I still want to get a video out for you guys, so I figured I'd go over some sleds and jigs I use in the shop most. I do have videos on each of these, and I'll link those down below for you guys to check out. But we'll kind of go over what each one is, and if you should maybe make one for your shop, and it will benefit you. So the first one I have here is a joiner jig, or a joiner sled, or whatever you want to call it, edge jointing jig, I don't know. Use it on the table saw basically, and how it works is that you have a board that has two unparalleled edges, which most boards do unless you get it already surfaced on three sides. You can sit it on here and clamp it down and then use this edge of the jig to run against the table saw, and that'll give you your straight edge. And what that does is basically acts like a joiner, so it'll give you a straight line cut on the opposite side of the piece you're working with, and then you can get rid of the jig, use that piece, flip it around, reference the fence from that straight side, and then get two parallel sides. It's actually really useful, especially if you don't have a joiner or you don't want to spend the money on one, or if you don't need it all that often. Very helpful, especially for like slabs and stuff like that. Like I said, I do have a video on this, and I'll link that down below. So the second one's a little bit more fancy. It's similar, but this is more for doing tapers. So if you see those legs that are tapered out and things like that on cadenzas or coffee tables even, basically anything you need to put taper on, this will do it. And for fairly cheap. I used some Rockler T-Track and their clamps and some hold downs. So basically all you got to do is loosen these two, and then you can adjust this for the angle you want. Tighten that back down, and then there's these hold down clamps to clamp your piece down. And then what you do is set your fence to wherever you need to cut the angle and run it along the fence, and you get your taper. I'll put some clips in here of me using it so you can kind of get a better idea. But basically, it just cuts tapers, and it's fairly cheap to make. So if you guys want to check this out, link below. This third one might be the most simple sled I use in the shop, and this is a planer sled. So basically what it does is if you have a piece that's too wide for your joiner to get one flat side to start with, you can use this and put your piece on here, shim it out so it's fairly flat, glue it down, and then run it through the planer to get one side flat on the top. And then you can set the sled aside, not get rid of it, don't get rid of it, it's useful. Set the sled aside and run the piece flat face down through the planer, and then you get two parallel sides. Kind of the same idea as the joiner jig for the table saw, but this is for your large faces. So it's pretty useful. I highly suggest making one. This fourth one's essentially the same thing, except for it's for pieces that are too wide to go through your planer. I mostly use it for like slabs or huge chunks of wood, things like that. I also have 3 or 4 different sizes of this because you don't need a huge 4-foot one to do a 2-foot slab. And I also have different heights of rails. So the rails, you use one on each side, and this just sits on them. Your router sits in the bed, and the bit extends through the slot in the bottom. And you use a nice flattening bit. If you guys want to check the one out I use all the time, I'll link it down below, and a discount code for you guys to save a little bit of money. But essentially, like I said, it goes through the slot, and then you run your router back and forth, flattening your slab on one side after you get it all shimmed out, and then you can flip it over and do the same thing and have a slab that has 2 flat sides. That's the goal, right? You need to start squared in, square, whatever they say. I don't know. This last one is my favorite one in the shop, and this is a juice groove jig or a blood ring groove jig. It's also the one I waited longest to make, which makes no sense because it's so simple, and I use it a ton. Essentially, depending on your router base, you're gonna have to customize it for that, and that will be this bottom piece in here. Hopefully you can see that. This is what determines how far away your router bit is from the fence. So basically you set your board in here. It's adjustable. I made it that way so you can do different size boards. I have another one that's even bigger for really big like butcher blocks, but essentially this is one I use most. The router just sits in there against the fence, plunges down, and you just run around the fence and you get a nice even groove all the way around. Now, I do see a lot of people having problems with burn marks and or chipping out, things like that. And the things I tell them is turn your speed down on your router if it's variable, hopefully it is, and also take lighter passes. And then as far as the burning goes, it's usually in the corners where you go up, hit the corner and stop, and the bit's just sitting there spinning against the wood, and it burns it, especially with like maple. So make a consistent pass all the way around, really light passes, and turn your speed down. You should be good to go. Now it's cool to get out in the shop and make stuff, but it's even cooler to get out in the shop and make stuff with stuff that you made, if that makes sense. I don't know, I just have more satisfaction with the DIY jigs than I do buying them. And they're more customizable too. So get out in the shop, make a couple of these, put them to use. Tag me on Instagram if you want, Walkers_Woodworks. I always love to see that. Until next time, you guys check out this video, and hopefully I'll be healed up enough to do a project here pretty quick. We'll catch you guys on the next one.